Hi everyone, it's Ardith, and I'm excited to be here with one of the new products from the February release from Catherine Pooler Designs. Rondi's Window is an absolutely stunning background stamp, and you can get so many looks with just this one stamp. Today I'm doing the labor-intensive look, coloring each area, and I've made two cards to show that just by changing the color palette, this stamp goes from fresh to festive in a snap. I started by removing the mouse pad from my Mini Misty, and I lined up a panel of white cardstock. Lining it up is important because I stamped it once with Copic-friendly ink, and later on I came back and re-stamped it with Midnight ink and some embossing powder to intensify the black and get a stained glass look. I'll show you some tips for that later. You can see that I hesitated here because although I lined it up on the grid, my panel wasn't up against the corner, which is the most stable position. So I needed to be sure I remembered exactly where it was. Let me tell you, all through the coloring, I was wondering if I would ever get it lined up again. At least I was smart enough to mark which way was up, although really there's only two options, but hey, I needed all the help I could get. So here comes the coloring, and as you can imagine, there's an absolute ton of it. I chose a bright, fresh rainbow of Copic markers, and I used 2 shades of each. One to color the area and one to outline it. This helps with the look of stained glass. I tried to keep the colors symmetrical in the pattern, and I think that's about all I have to say about the coloring. You can skip through it if you want, and I'll put some music on to keep you from falling asleep. When it was time to fill in the background, I wanted to have it deeper in the center and fading out toward the edges. To help with that, I used some circle dies to cut masks, and I used them as guides for my coloring. I used the darkest gray in the smallest circle, the midtone in the next one, and then I filled in the rest with the lightest gray. A computer paper mask will not prevent Copic markers from bleeding, but because I was blending it outwards, darkest to lightest, it didn't really matter. Okay, now for the scariest part. After all that work, I seriously considered not restamping. I was terrified that I wasn't going to get it right. But 2 things helped me. Well, okay, 3. First, I knew which way was up. Second, once I laid the panel down in the Misty, I could see that the stamped lines on the Misty base were lining up really well, so that gave me some confidence. Then I had another idea. I could test stamp on one area. I knew I was likely to cut down the panel anyway, so I figured I could try restamping just on a corner, and that would help me know if it was all positioned correctly. I used a different color of ink so it would be visible if it wasn't lined up properly, but miracle of miracles, it was. I can't lie though, I was still nervous when I pulled out the Midnight ink. But once I stamped it, I knew it was all worth it. That deep crisp black really upped the wow factor of all the coloring. I quickly embossed it with clear embossing powder and melted it with my heat tool. To finish the card, I trimmed the panel with a stitched rectangle die from postage stamp dies, and I placed it on the right-hand edge of a 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 inch black card base. I used one of the new Ways to Say Hey border dies as a simple greeting. And just to show you, I went back and made a Christmas card using the exact same process but with a different color palette, focusing on reds and greens. And although the original stamping was in black, my finishing layer was with embossing ink and I used gold embossing powder. I love the vintage elegant look. I cut this panel with a circle die and then I placed it on a black 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch card base. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that Rondi's Window is going to be a favorite for me. Shopping links are below and on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.